When Ibrahim Traoré finally met Keanu Reeves in person, no one could have predicted how emotional the moment would become. In a heartwarming exchange, Keanu's unexpected words and actions brought Traoré to tears, leaving everyone watching deeply moved to witness this unforgettable moment of humility, admiration, and human connection. The week had already been long for Ibrahim Traoré, president of the transition of Burkina Faso. Between tense meetings with his cabinet and visiting families displaced by violence, he barely had time to breathe. But late one night, a quiet knock on his office door changed everything. It was his assistant holding an envelope. "This just came for you, sir," she said, handing it over. Ibrahim opened it slowly. Inside was a simple card. "We would be honored if you could join us for a private dinner in Paris this Saturday. A friend has asked to meet you personally." No signature. He looked up, confused. A friend? His assistant? Hesitated before replying. "They said it's Keanu Reeves." For a moment, Ibrahim said nothing, staring at the card in disbelief. Why would one of Hollywood's biggest stars want to meet him? And yet, something deep in his chest told him he couldn't say no. What he didn't know was that this meeting would change him forever and leave everyone in the room in tears. Saturday came quickly. Ibrahim boarded the early morning flight to Paris, keeping the card tucked safely in his jacket pocket. As the plane soared over the clouds, he stared out the window, his thoughts spinning. Keanu Reeves. The name meant something even in Burkina Faso, known for his humility, his kindness, his quiet strength, traits Ibrahim himself valued deeply. But why would Keanu care to meet a young African leader, someone many still doubted even in his own country? His aide sitting across the aisle leaned over. "Are you nervous, sir?" she asked. He gave her a faint smile. "More than I have been in years," he admitted. The hours passed slowly. By the time the plane landed, dusk was falling in Paris. A black car was waiting for him at the airport. The driver only said one thing as Ibrahim got in. "He's waiting for you." And he said, "Don't be late." Ibrahim nodded silently, his heart already pounding harder than he liked to admit. Something about this night felt different, like he was about to learn something he'd never forget. The car pulled up to a quiet, understated restaurant tucked away on a cobblestone street. No flashing lights, no photographers, just a single doorman who opened the car door and gestured him inside. Ibrahim stepped into the restaurant and immediately noticed something strange. It was almost empty, just a few tables, a faint glow of warm light, the soft hum of a piano playing in the corner. At the far end of the room sat one man alone, Keanu Reeves. He stood when he saw Ibrahim offering that famous shy smile as he extended his hand. "Ibram," Keanu said simply, "thank you for coming." Ibrahim froze for just a moment, overwhelmed by the sincerity in his voice. Then he took Keanu's hand, feeling the strength and warmth in his grip. "You wanted to see me?" Ibrahim asked quietly. Keanu nodded, his eyes suddenly soft with something almost like sadness. "Yes," he said, "because there's something I've been waiting years to tell you. Something I think you deserve to know." The weight of his words hung in the air like a storm, about to break, and Ibrahim felt his throat tighten. The waiter quietly poured them water, then left, leaving only silence between Ibrahim and Keanu. Keanu leaned forward, his elbows resting on the table, and studied Ibrahim with calm, kind eyes. "Do you know Keanu began how many young men write me letters every year?" Ibrahim shook his head, unsure what to say. Keanu smiled faintly. "Most of them just want an autograph. But one letter years ago stayed with me." Ibrahim frowned, curious. Keanu reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper yellowed with time. "This letter," he said, placing it on the table, "came from a boy in Ouagadougou. He said he didn't believe heroes were real until he saw one in the movies. He said it gave him hope he could become someone better." Ibrahim froze. He remembered that letter because he had written it. His hands trembled slightly as he looked down at the paper. Keanu's voice softened even more. "You signed it, Ibrahim? You were 13. Ibrahim's breath hitched. He hadn't expected this. Not tonight, not ever. For a moment, Ibrahim didn't know what to say. Keanu just smiled quietly and went on. "That letter came to me when I was in a dark place," when he said, voice breaking just slightly. "It reminded me why I do what I do, why kindness matters." Keanu's hands were steady as he pushed the letter closer to Ibrahim. "You told me you didn't believe you'd live past 16, Keanu continued. "That you didn't believe you mattered," Ibrahim swallowed, his eyes wet. "And you ended the letter by saying you just wanted someone somewhere to believe you were worth saving." Keanu's voice dropped to a whisper, "And I believed you were." I never forgot that. For the first time in years, Ibrahim felt himself crack. The tears slid down his cheeks before he could stop them. The most powerful man in his country, now reduced to the boy he once was. The boy who needed someone to care, and Keanu had cared all this time. Neither man spoke for a while. The restaurant was quiet, but for the soft notes of the piano in the corner. Then Keanu stood and came around the table. Without a word, he opened his arms. Ibrahim stood too, and they embraced, not as a celebrity and a president, but as two humans who understood each other's pain and hope. The staff standing by watched silently, moved to see two strong, humble men holding each other like brothers. "You changed my life," Ibrahim finally whispered, his voice. Keanu shook his head, still holding him. "No," Keanu said softly, "you saved mine." When they finally pulled apart, Ibrahim saw that Keanu's eyes, too, were shining with tears. It was a moment no one in that room would ever forget. Because it wasn't about power, it wasn't about fame. It was about kindness, gratitude, and the quiet way hearts can reach each other, even across continents, even across decades. And somewhere deep inside, Ibrahim realized this meeting was meant to be. They sat back down, both men quiet for a long moment. Then Ibrahim found his voice, though it wavered. How did you keep this all these years?" he asked, his eyes still glistening. Keanu smiled softly, running his fingers over the folded paper. "Because it reminded me," he said simply, "that what we do matters, even if we never see the result. That letter got me through some of my darkest nights." Ibrahim swallowed hard. "When I wrote that, I didn't think anyone would even read it," he admitted. Keanu shook his head. "I read it over and over, and I thought, if a boy in Burkina Faso living through what you described can still believe in good, then I have no excuse not to keep going." Ibrahim felt something heavy in his chest begin to lift. In all his years of struggle, he'd never imagined he could have meant so much to someone like Keanu. And now, here they were. Two men who had unknowingly carried each other through storms. The waiter discreetly brought dinner, though neither man seemed interested in the food. Instead, they shared quiet stories of battles, fought, losses endured, moments of doubt. Keanu listened intently as Ibrahim told him about the nights he spent sleeping on the floor as a boy, the sound of gunfire outside, the fear of never seeing sunrise. "You kept fighting," Keanu said softly, "even when it felt hopeless. That's what makes you who you are." Ibrahim looked down, almost ashamed. "I still don't feel like I've done enough," he confessed. Keanu reached across the table and placed a firm hand on his. "Don't ever doubt it. You've done more for your people than most ever. Will, and you gave hope to me, too. That matters." Around them, the room felt warmer somehow, filled with a quiet reverence. Even the staff who glanced their way seemed to sense they were witnessing something rare. To humble men reminding each other why kindness and courage still mattered, and for the first time in years, Ibrahim allowed himself a small, genuine smile. Just as dessert was served, Keanu cleared his throat, his expression suddenly more serious. "There's something else," he said. Ibrahim leaned forward, sensing the weight of what was coming. Keanu reached into his jacket and pulled out a small, framed photograph. He set it gently on the table. It was a picture of a young boy, skinny, barefoot, standing in a dusty street in Ouagadougou. Ibrahim froze. It was him taken the same year he'd written the letter. "I had someone track you down," Keanu admitted softly. "Not to invade your life, but because I needed to know you were okay, that the boy who wrote me made it." Tears pulled in Ibrahim's eyes as he stared at his younger self, a child who never believed he'd live to see adulthood. Now here he was, not just alive, but leading his nation. The emotions crashed over him all at once, raw and overwhelming. He pressed a hand over his face, unable to hold back the sob that escaped his throat. And in that moment, everyone in the room felt it. The shared humanity of two souls, broken and rebuilt, standing tall for the world to see. The photograph sat between them, and for a long moment, no words came. Ibrahim stared at the boy in the picture, himself barefoot, eyes hollow, but holding just a spark of hope. "I don't even remember that day," Ibrahim whispered, his voice breaking. Keanu gently placed his hand over Ibrahim's. "I do," Keanu said softly. "I kept it on my desk for years. Whenever I felt like giving up, I'd look at that boy and tell myself, you can't let him down." Ibrahim's shoulders trembled, and he finally looked up, meeting Keanu's kind, steady gaze. "And you didn't," Ibrahim managed to say. "You didn't let me down," Keanu smiled faintly. "And neither did you. Look at what you've become around them." The quiet hum of the restaurant seemed to fade. It was as if the world had paused to honor the quiet, powerful bond forming at that table. Two lives thousands of miles apart, now forever connected. For the first time in years, Ibrahim felt seen not as a president, not as a leader, but as a human being, and it nearly broke him. As Ibrahim wiped his eyes, he realized the restaurant had gone completely quiet. He glanced up and saw that everyone in the room was watching them. Dozens of strangers moved by the sight of two men embracing their shared humanity. Then something remarkable happened. One by one, people began to stand, and they clapped. The sound grew louder and louder, not for fame, not for power, but for courage, kindness, and humility. Keanu glanced around, visibly surprised, but smiled and gave a small nod of thanks. Ibrahim's heart pounded in his chest as he stood too overwhelmed by the unexpected show of support. For a man who had spent his life fighting to be heard, to matter, it was almost too much to bear. He pressed a hand over his heart, his eyes wet, and bowed slightly to the room. And in that moment, Ibrahim realized something important. Sometimes the quietest kindness can echo louder than any speech, and tonight the whole world seemed to hear. As the applause faded and the diners returned to their tables, Keanu reached into his bag. "I have something for you," he said quietly. Ibrahim looked puzzled as Keanu placed a small, simple wooden box on the table. "Open it," Keanu encouraged. Inside was a silver pocket watch, old but beautifully polished. Ibrahim carefully picked it up, feeling its weight in his hands. "It was my father's," Keanu explained. "He gave it to me when I was a boy, and he told me, 'Give this to someone when you meet a man of true strength.'" Keanu's voice grew quiet, full of emotion. "I've carried it all my life, and now it's yours." Ibrahim was speechless. His fingers trembled as he turned the watch over, seeing the small engraving on the back. "Be the hope you once needed." Tears welled up in his eyes again. No medal, no title, no speech he'd ever received felt as meaningful as this. And as he looked at Keanu, he finally understood. It was never about the watch. It was about what it meant. As Ibrahim held the pocket watch, a memory he'd buried long ago came rushing back. He was just 9 years old, sitting on the dusty steps of his school. He'd watched an old action movie playing on a tiny television through a shop window, and there was Keanu playing the hero. The boy he once was had whispered to himself, "One day I'll be like him. I'll fight for people." And now, decades later, that boy had grown into a man who led his country through its hardest days. And here he was. Sitting across from that same hero, Ibrahim's eyes glistened as he whispered, "You've been in my heart longer than you know." Keanu sat back, stunned, his own eyes moist. "I think," Keanu said quietly, "you've always been the real hero in this story, Ibrahim." For a moment, neither spoke. The world outside the restaurant kept moving. Cars honked, people walked. But here, at this table, time seemed to stand still. They both realized how powerful it is when someone truly sees you, and how healing it can be to simply say, "Thank you." Either of them noticed the cameras at first. Across the street, a small crowd had gathered, some holding up phones, some just standing silently watching in awe. Someone whispered, "Is that Ibrahim Traoré and Keanu Reeves?" Two men, one from Burkina Faso, one from Hollywood, sharing tears and quiet smiles. As Ibrahim stepped outside with Keanu beside him, applause rose again from the onlookers. A young woman approached, holding her daughter's hand. "Thank you for showing the world what a true leader looks like." Ibrahim bent down, shook the little girl's hand, and said gently, "One day, you'll be the one to lead. Never stop believing." Keanu, watching the exchange, felt his own tears threaten again. People weren't just watching, they were feeling. And as more cameras flashed, Ibrahim thought to himself, maybe kindness was contagious after all, and maybe it could even change the world. As the sun began to set, Keanu and Ibrahim sat quietly in a nearby park away from the crowd. Keanu turned to him and finally said the words he'd been holding back all day. "You saved lives, Ibrahim. You gave hope when no one else would." "I've played heroes in movies, but you're the kind of hero the world really needs." Ibrahim's hands trembled. No one had ever said it to him like that. Not his advisors, not even his family. And hearing it from someone he'd admired as a child, someone who had unknowingly inspired his own journey, broke something inside him. The tears came silently at first, then harder until he was openly crying. Keanu placed a steady hand on his shoulder, and for the first time in years, Ibrahim let himself simply be a man. Not a leader, not a president, just a man who had tried his best and who, in this moment, finally knew it had been enough. The crowd had thinned, night had fallen, and only the glow of streetlights illuminated the quiet park bench where they sat. Keanu broke the silence. "I have to ask you something, Ibrahim, something I've never asked anyone before." Ibrahim nodded, eyes still red from tears. "How," Keanu said softly, "do you stay kind? How do you stay hopeful after everything you've seen? How do you not give up?" The weight of the question hung between them. Ibrahim closed his eyes and took a deep breath, and then, almost whispering, he answered, "Because every day I see children who believe the world can be better. And because every night, when I lay my head down, I remind myself I am just one man. But one man can still choose love over hate." Keanu lowered his head. Overcome, that simple truth hit him harder than any speech he'd heard in his life. The cameras weren't rolling anymore. No audience, just two men stripped of everything but their humanity. And in that moment, Keanu wept. And this time, Ibrahim held his hand. News of the meeting spread like wildfire overnight. By morning, millions had watched a short clip of Keanu and Ibrahim embracing on the park bench, both with tears streaming down their faces. Social media erupted, but not with the usual noise. This time, it was gratitude. People around the world wrote things like, "Thank you for showing us what humility looks like." "I can't stop crying." This is what leadership really means. The world needs more hearts like theirs. In Burkina Faso, thousands gathered outside the presidential palace with candles. In Los Angeles, a mural of the two men appeared overnight. Painted on Sunset Boulevard, that day, as Ibrahim returned to his hotel before his flight back home, he passed a small group of children holding a banner. It read, "Thank you for being the hero we didn't know we needed." He stopped, knelt down, and whispered, "No, thank you for reminding me why I started." And for the first time in years, he felt truly at peace. At the airport, Keanu waited for him at the gate. They didn't speak at first, they just hugged. Keanu pressed something into Ibrahim's hand. A simple folded note. It said, "Dear Ibrahim, you taught me more in one night than I've learned in 50 years. If you ever doubt yourself again, just remember the world is better because of you. Your brother, always, Keanu." And for the third time that week, Ibrahim cried. But these tears felt different. They were tears of healing, of hope, because kindness had come full circle. And somewhere high above the clouds, he smiled, knowing he wasn't alone. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video. Let's spread this message of kindness and connection together. Thank you for watching, and don't forget, one act of love can change the